Well, it's 11:02, so we'll call this meeting to order. Deborah, roll call, please.
Certainly. Walker.
Here.
Bentley.
Here.
Bollinger will be on her way. Dowling.
Here.
Color.
Here.
Register. Here. Shaw. Here.
Okay, you have the minutes from the last meeting. Any comments, revisions?
No.
They are approved as submitted. Thank you, Deborah. Residence forum. Do we have any speakers?
There are no Zoom speakers and there are no in-person speakers. That concludes the residence forum.
Just a couple of comments. I just want to say as we end the term of this task force, again, I want to thank you guys for all your contributions, your perspectives and insights and lack of hesitancy to contribute. It's really awesome. And I think it's been a great experience for all of us. We have staff things to take care of as a result of this. And we're going to drop a bomb on Anne with these recommendations, but certainly appreciate all of her efforts as well. An item that came up during the planning committee meeting was that the RFP that was developed for rossmore.com contained a primary objective that said, primary objective of this website is to get a tour.
To lead users down the path to getting a tour.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for
You're
that
welcome.
clarification. So I think we need to have a little discussion on that, and we can do that right now. Do we feel that that's the primary objective? And that was the only primary objective that was listed in the RFP. Ted?
I'll get us started and then everybody else can jump in. I don't feel like the primary objective is to get a tour. I think the primary objective is to introduce people in a way to Rossmore that's going to make us want to be their choice to as an active retirement community to move into. I think that is what the objective of that marketing page should be. Along with that, you got all the other stuff that could be in there in advertising for realtors they can click on a realtor, find a realtor to get a tour, to do the stuff that they're going to be doing, and a way to visit would be go through a realtor. I think that's the best thing. Mm-hmm. And then we can, and that's just my thoughts on it. It should be really marketing people to say, I'm looking at these 3 different locations. This one stands out as the most fun place to live.
Mike.
It seems to me that the objective of the website is to tour people through Rossmore so that they can see what we have to offer and make them consider it as a possibility for living. So the tour aspect to me is what they're doing as they scroll through the different aspects of the website. So that doesn't seem unreasonable.
Right.
Are you talking about touring on the website or
On the
touring
website.
physically?
No, a website
Okay,
is the tour.
so
Like a virtual tour.
Yeah, virtual tour, right.
Linda, any thoughts on that?
I guess from my background, I just think that fine tuning what you want to happen as a result of someone going to that page is really, really important. I was under the impression that we had sales falling off and that what we wanted to do was really showcase Rossmore and get them to the point where they were trying to contact somebody. I'm not sure. I mean, it could be something else. If it's too soft, I think we'll get the same thing we've had before, which is, yeah, there's 20 to look for, click, 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 you know. So it's just something I think we need to consider is a call to action.
Yes, yeah.
I'm not sure the tour is that important. I think Rossmore sells itself. You get them inside. I was somebody who came from a background of a city council. I couldn't figure out Rossmore. It took me about a month to figure out the structure, how the mutuals worked. For me, a big issue was, is it in the city of Walnut Creek? And somewhere on the website talks about, Securitas will come and help you if there's a 911 call. There is a fire station right outside the gate. That's what we need to emphasize, not Securitas, but those are trained firefighters. And there's a whole station right outside Rossmore. So those kind of things I thought were important that I didn't see on the website. I had to research, or when I came, I'm like, oh, there's a fire station right outside Rossmore. I think that to me, maybe it's just my perspective as a former city council member, I couldn't figure out the governance structure. Oh,
Amy, just to let you know what we're talking
Thank
about.
you. Sorry, I'm late.
No, I
Unavoidable.
appreciate you. You're not very late at all. But it came up in the planning committee. The RFP contained a phrase that said the primary objective of the website is
Terminology.
Basically to lead down the path of getting a tour.
To getting into,
Leading down the path to getting a tour.
okay,
And that was
so the process to tour.
It's what they're
Breadcrumbs to
looking at the
tour.
website
Yes.
as the path that someone would take, with the inevitable action being to get a tour.
A tour by whom?
It would be with the real estate agents, because we've already determined, well, we'll talk in a moment about the ambassador program, but that is the tour structure we have set up.
Okay, so,
back to you in a second. I want to get Kathleen's thoughts on this.
So I can understand why it's set up that way. If you think about the idea of what in marketing we call a buyer's journey or a customer journey, starts with awareness of that there's a problem, guides all the way down to a solution of that problem. And we're not solving the entire problem with the website, but I can see why it, that a tour or some semblance of a tour is kind of a pivot point. And maybe we can only go that far digitally. Kind of building on what Kevin was saying, I think that the website represents Rossmore to the outside world, which means that it is primarily a marketing website, but it also is a communication website to notify all of these different constituents, not counting the residents, but any external constituents about Rossmore. So I think it plays a broader role. And kind of sensitive to what Linda was saying, like, well, what's a soft, what are your metrics? Like, are you gonna measure like, oh, how many tourists did we get? Which I'm not even sure could be measured because of the fact that there's so many external parties. But I think it might be more accurate to say something like, to support and I'm just making it up on the fly, it's probably not the best thing, but to support the external stakeholders, especially, prospective customers or whatever, as on their, I don't know if you want to use marketing terms, customer journey towards, because it's not even just a buying thing. Like I said, we want people to want to work here. We want people to want to be suppliers here, businesses to do business here. So I think it has to play a little bit broader role. So I'm not sure exactly how to phrase that, but I think it needs to support those external communication in a broader way.
I think a phrase you have used before on websites is call to action, whatever the action is. You want a tour, you want to apply for a management position within Rossmore, whatever it is, it's a call to action. Do this, look at that, think about this. That's like the trampoline and everything bounces off of that. That's my take on it.
So what is the call to action?
Well,
That's what I'm saying. I don't think that there is a single one. I think
Yeah.
Amy's right, but this is where, getting a tour is one call to action.
Yes,
And you
But
talked
it's not
about
the only one.
there are multiple calls to action.
We're gonna have a link to the listings, to the multiple listings, and a click on that could be something we could use as a metric.
So let me explain what we do with Rossmore.com now, so perhaps you have a better idea of kind of how we've structured what's not an ideal design, I admit. One of the things that we've put front facing is the all around Rossmore guide, the digital copy, and the welcome to Rossmore video. Understanding that those are strong entry points for prospective residents. So we understand we're not going to be able to really lead them fully down the path of getting a tour, but that we can introduce, it goes back to, I don't remember who, I think Ted said the introduce part, introducing them to, this is what Rossmore is. Now, if you're interested, come learn more. click the guide, click the video, you get them
Why
deeper
isn't
in.
that or something very similar to what you just said?
As the primary objective.
Yeah.
Yes.
Introduce external stakeholders, especially prospective buyers and their families, to
Support them on their.
what, whatever, anyway, you said it better than I did. But I think better I think having metrics that might be a specific call to action, like Amy was saying. You know, here's 3 metrics that we would say were successful. One might be, how many clicks do we get on view properties? How many this, how many that? You know, no more than just a few as success metrics. But what you just said, I think, for me at least, supports what a website needs to do, which is a little bit broader than what just that one single metric.
Right. I agree.
Is that do we have some language?
So if we're working on this, this is kind of the starting point. Introduce Rossmore to the external stakeholders, especially prospective customers, to support their customer journey. So it's
This customer journey might be too marketing-ish.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree.
I know what that means, but maybe a lot of them.
Yeah, I think it's too wordy.
Or exploration, that's a nice part.
Maybe you
Because then you
widen it
have
a little bit.
call to action be click here for this, click here for this, click, you know, you want a tour, you want to talk to HR, you want to, whatever. You know.
Is a broader appeal, you know?
And we won't be able, the staff won't be able to keep the links. Like, for example, they might, often the website plays an intermediary role. So for example, if you have somebody's employee, they might have seen it on, you know, a job site, Indeed.com or something like that. And they're gonna go, and then they go, oh, I wanna see, oh, this looks like a cool place to live or a cool place to work. And then they go back to that site. So you won't be able to see the full, you know, all of the clicks in the journey. But yet it has to support that effort.
Yes, I agree.
Linda, I think you have a question on your mind. I'm just looking.
No, I was just thinking again about what you said and looking at the Southern California site of the process because it's so complex. And, you know, how do you bridge all that and get somebody in here? And so I was thinking, you know, really much more hardcore, get here button, a get here button. And then, but I don't think you can take that and talk to too many constituents when you have some that strong.
Bifurcate that, you mean? Bifurcate the get here?
Yeah, I was thinking that something much more action oriented. But it's a complex issue to try to get into Rossmore and figure out how it works and then think, they don't even know if they buy here. So I guess that's why
I think there might be, so going back to the concept I brought up before, which is at different steps in these journeys as prospective buyers get closer and closer to wanting to do stuff, they move from why, you know, so like the first, they move from why questions. And then in the middle, they're kind of a mixture of why and how. And then by the time that they're almost ready to buy, they've already been convinced of why. Now they're asking all the detailed questions like, how does this really work? And what if I do this? And do they allow this? I'm not sure those things are appropriate for the website.
I agree.
Because once you get, because then you need like a person to really answer those questions and explain them, because a lot of times they get really detailed and very specific to someone's situation. They need to be answered in some kind of content and by, you know, whatever audience. But I think the website probably is, I'm gonna say, 80% why and 20% how. So that there's just enough of the how to be able to say, okay, these people know what they're talking about. This kind of makes sense. I don't know what those questions are, but then once they pass them, then they should have like a call me button, you know, some call to action that pushes them into whether it's going to buy something or, you know, be employed or want to become a contractor, you know, whatever are the different external things. But at that point, they probably need to talk to a person. You need to switch channels. You don't need to have in fact, it's inappropriate.
All right, I've got another idea. Introduce Rossmore to the external stakeholders, especially prospective customers, to lead them to further explore the community for their active adult living needs. Are we now touching it a little bit more? Because then that gives you the ability to go down, depending on what they want to explore, it
Pertinent
gives
paths.
them the different paths. It would address the different
I
paths.
like it. I would say not customer, but resident.
But it's more than that.
It is more than that, yeah.
But-
Yeah, but as,
But not everybody.
as Kathleen's talking, she's also talking about prospective employees, prospective
Business
vendors.
services.
But they're not
Services.
customers then.
Well, they are customers.
Yeah.
They are customers in the sense that we're talking about target audience, right? So they're
Okay.
part of our different target
Yeah,
audiences. It
okay,
goes beyond just the prospective
We can't
buyers.
operate unless those people are also
okay,
engaged.
all right. I don't know, customer sounds,
Yeah, the customer sounds a little funny.
it sounds funny to me in the
Just
sentence. that's all I'm
stakeholders,
saying.
external stakeholders, because those are,
We
that's
can
kind
just
of a
strike
word.
the, especially prospective customers, we can just say to the external stakeholders. I mean, we don't have to specify that.
Maybe that.
Or
would be-
maybe we can just at that part say, especially prospective buyers, because we are still saying external stakeholders.
Yeah, stakeholders, especially.
By the way, this is directions for the website,
Right.
Yes.
web developer,
right.
not for the public at large.
Yes.
But it's also,
So we're
it's
close
also
here.
gonna be wording that we're gonna put in the motion that got sent back to the planning
Correct.
committee, right?
Well, it's going straight to the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it will go into the RFP, so the request for proposals.
Could you
So we
bring
just-
back what you?
I would be
just
happy
had?
to. Introduce Rossmore to the external stakeholders, especially prospective buyers, to lead them to further explore the community for their active adult living needs.
The last part doesn't tie in with the other customers.
About something like explore Rossmore as, yeah, to their needs or whatever, but maybe just not living.
Active living, I forget, just needs.
So to lead them to further explore the community for their needs.
That makes sense.
I think active living should be in there. Needs is like, you know.
Well, we could say to lead them to further explore the active adult
There
community
we go.
for their needs. Yes.
Well, why not
because-
for- just stop with community?
Yes. I
You don't need for their needs. That's
Okay.
dangling.
Parts
It's
of it.
assumed.
So one more time, introduce Rossmore to the external stakeholders, especially prospective buyers, to lead them to further explore the active adult community.
Yes.
All right.
All in agreement?
Close enough.
All right.
All right, excellent.
If I can go back a minute to Kevin's comments, aren't we gonna have a fact button, FAQ, on the website that could answer some of the questions he asked about the fire station?
Yes.
We're part of Walnut Creek.
And I think that comes in down the line a little bit when we actually start building this thing.
Yeah, just a, it's a,
Yeah,
Get that
yeah.
kids on.
it's,
In the values thing that we had, where we had security or what they are now, something related to security. And underneath, in the example that I used, which is a, typical way, there's proof points. And so underneath, if you want to prove that Rossmore is a secure place, you would be able to have, well, I'm going to show that this is here, I'm going to show that this is here. And that could be an example, maybe one that we have left out, but it would lead us to say like, well, how complete can we be in being able to describe that? And would be an easy thing to do. And whether that's answered through an FAQ or just bullets of things that exist here, that would be the website people's decision as to what the best way is to communicate.
Okay, well, let's move on to my favorite topic, myrossmore.com, and how we can move beyond the Minecraft design that we currently have. Well, it's a big movie right now, but, Dan, you have some updates.
I do.
You look pretty good. Much more colorful.
All right, so here we go. We're looking at selecting between two paths. And I imagine most of you are kind of surprised what's Vermont Systems. So right now, Recreation is in the process of doing demos with 4 different recreation software programs. One of them is already out, so we're down to 3. The one, Agilicis, is actually demoing today. Vermont Systems is one that came into play for recreation that turns out could be just like Agilicis. They have a golf component. Javier, who's on my team, is kind of breaking it down to make sure it can meet all of our needs. So far, the initial analysis says it could. So it is possible that Vermont Systems would give us what Agilicis would give us, which is that where we would have our front-facing homepage, which everybody would be able to go to from the public, but then you would be able to click into that password-protected resident services component. So you would have golf, you would have the room reservations, the recreation tickets, excursions, classes. This one also folds in fitness. So you'd be looking at fitness classes, personal training. But the fun part again is everything housed in one place means one single sign-on. So that's path number one. In the event that one of the three that's still in the mix that they just did the demo with and is very, very strong for the reservations component, that would not give us the ability, because it does not have golf, to keep that single sign-on. So in that case, we would be keeping Rossmore, my Rossmore as it is now, the resident portal, with one exception. First I'll walk through. So again, just a reminder, this is Agilicis, which puts all of these different components as different modules under one single sign-on.
Clarification.
Yes,
So Vermont and Agilicis are two of the three
are two of the three.
that you're looking at, and
Correct.
either one of them, it looks like.
Either one of them could give us that
So
single
it would
sign-on
only be if
experience.
both of those failed and the third one was the only one that
Correct.
could do what they needed.
Correct.
Thank you.
Can I ask a clarification question
can.
too? Because I know we like the thought of a single sign-on, but not every resident does room reservations. Do we really need because room reservations, in my opinion, is so important, especially right now, that we get it right. And it has to be the best system out there, or we have another problem on our hands.
Mhm.
So is there a downside to having an Agilicis or Vermont that has a click-through to another sign-on for room reservations?
So here's the thing, right? In order for room reservations to work really well, you need it to be able to hit all the different pieces. So for example, if you are renting the room at the event center and you have a concert and you're charging tickets, you want to be able to funnel those together. So you need it in the same recreation software program. If you need tech support as part of that, you want to be able to schedule tech support within that software system. If you split out and you use one program just for room reservations, what you've now done is complicated the process for all the other pieces that come as part of the software package. So it makes the most sense that room reservations is coupled with scheduling for personal training, scheduling for tech time, scheduling for custodial, selling the tickets, selling the excursions, etc. It is a very lengthy, if you looked at the demo script that was sent to all of the software companies, it was 28 pages long. That's how many components we're trying to find all housed in one, because you want that to be consistent and you want everything to work together really well. That's part of the problem we have right now. You have all these different software companies doing different things, and so we're manually trying to connect them. We
So
don't
what you're
wanna
really
manually
trying to do
connect
is
things.
event management.
Yes.
Room reservation is just one small piece of that.
Exactly. But we've all identified it's the most important piece in here. So that is what drives the conversation as to which software we pick. My Rossmore becomes a second consideration, but that's because we also know there is another path we can go with my Rossmore if we need to. I'm just excited because, again, Vermont Systems now means that of the ones they're looking at, 2 of the 3 give us the ability to do that single sign-on experience. Single sign-on, we decided at the last meeting, remember, is more important than just kind of hodgepodging with different software, because otherwise you bring them to one location and they have to sign into for golf, sign into whatever the software is to buy tickets, sign into something else to do dwelling live. I mean, it's too many sign-ins that we all agreed we don't want that experience for them. So we knocked out the individual, just click, link, sign in. We knocked that one out and we're down to the 2. So it's either now Agilicis or Vermont, or I want to give you an example of what my Rossmore could look like. This is actually my Rossmore now. Javier spent a day and made it look better.
I mean, it's live like this?
It's not live because we didn't make it go live twice.
That's it, but it's very
But this is
colorful.
what-
I was gonna say, I
This
was
is what
just
it
on
can
it
look
this
like.
morning and I didn't see this.
The
It must
point
have happened
is,
right after I was on.
Everyone's is kind of hung up on the look of that
Yes.
archaic
Yes.
1980s kind of
Yes.
screen.
Yes, that's
And-
great.
Exactly. And what I'm trying to say is that we can make things look a lot better.
Okay,
It's cosmetic. I realize that it's cosmetic. It still will operate the way my Rossmore does. So when you click on golf, it is still gonna take you to that 4-up screen. But what the important part is, we can make it look better. Our staff can make it look better and function as well, because quite honestly, the function capability on my Rossmore is fine. That's not the problem, it's the look. And so we can work on that.
And this,
That's what I'm trying to prove here.
this is all single sign-on, right? And you
This
just
is
click
all
and go,
single
yeah.
sign-on, so everything that you see here would all live under that one space. What we have to determine, and there's pieces we still have, questions we still have to ask. We need to go to the mutuals and find out what needs to be public-facing versus what goes behind the single sign-on. So for example, we don't want to make the buying experience more difficult by putting all the governing documents, the CC&Rs and the policies behind my Rossmore sign-on.
Right.
Because they need to know, can they have pets and can they have barbecue grills? That's things that they're gonna ask. So that piece needs to be left on the outside. So we would leave it up to the mutuals to make the decision as to what they want on the front-facing homepage that's publicly accessible versus what they want behind the sign-on. For sure, what stays behind the sign-on is all the resident services. None of those would come out front.
And I have a question. So this
Yes.
is just a new look
That's what it
at the
is.
front page.
Correct.
Everything else behind it, what happens behind it, behind closed doors, will be the redesign.
So what would happen behind closed doors if we're doing this one, if we're talking about staying with our current My Rossmore, would still be what you're seeing now.
Okay.
So you click on golf, it will still take you to that tee time screen you see for 4-up.
Okay.
That part doesn't change. And we don't want to mess with that because that functions well and everyone knows how to use it. So let's not fix something that's not broke. What you would see different though is if you click on events, now you may see a slightly different screen for purchasing a ticket because we will have a different recreation software program.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
So that part will have to still be
That software will
connected.
support this.
Correct.
Okay, that's all.
No matter, I will state that up front. That's why the first software company that we looked at for a demo is already out. It can't connect to NetSuite, can't connect to My Rossmore. It is a requirement that it connects to both the new ERP system and that it can connect to My Rossmore. So those are requirements. Regardless, one of these two worlds will be our future.
Some of the stuff that we determined was not appropriate for the external, though that will be imported here. Has
That's
that already
correct.
been done yet, or?
We're working on it. We're
Okay.
working behind the scenes
So,
on that
so
right
the
now.
look and stuff will, but there may be new information, not
Yes.
necessarily new
So
functionality, but
if you
new.
can see at the bottom where it says resident info, when you click on that, you're gonna get another dynamic page like this that will have the different components that are moving over. So you'll have, the fitness center, the pool hours. A lot of this, what we're now doing is we're breaking it down. We're saying, which part of this were we trying to sell it to the folks out here? Look, we have 3 pools versus what do residents need to know? When are they open? When's family swim? Who has lifeguards? So we have very different approaches for how we're doing the 2 websites and how we're building those pages.
I have a question about the 2 providers you're looking at, seriously. So, and this is a lot of change, a lot of work.
Mhm.
So if we looked at how the flexibility of the 2 vendors with modifications that come later. First time launch is, there's always issues. And we're looking at that, are they the same service providers in that regard?
So anytime you do this, you look at what are your immediate needs. So what we have set up now, what gets us closest to that setup so you don't have to change that workflow. The second piece of it is what's called a roadmap. You want to know where the company is going or what they have that would enable us to grow and evolve. And so one of the things that comes up is you'll see with Vermont Systems is an app. That is the one thing that's missing. And I'll tell you right now, if we don't have Agilysys or Vermont Systems, it is highly unlikely that my Rossmore would have an app for 5, 6, could be longer years down the road. Developing an app is very expensive. Finding a company that already does it would be great. So again, as much as possible, that's part of our wish list, if you will, with these different vendors, but it is not a requirement. Our requirement is we need to give our residents and our staff who are doing all the work behind the scenes the exact system and setup that we have right now. We don't want to take any services away from the residents, and we also don't want to make it more complicated for the staff to do what they're doing now. And so that becomes layer number 1. That's the most important box to check. So when they selected the 4 current vendors for recreation, there was a complete checklist of check which ones apply. And again, the first company is already out because they checked the box saying, yes, we have open API and we can connect to NetSuite. And then in the demo, they're like, well, not yet, but we're working on it. It's like, nope, not good enough, you're out. And so now we're on to the next 3. So yes, there's the requirement level, there's the wish list, and then there's the roadmap. And again, that could ultimately, you could have 2 systems that are side by side that do everything the same, but one of them has a roadmap that's leading you where you think we're gonna be with our residents 10 years from now. That's the one we would select for the roadmap.
That's what I was asking.
You're welcome. Yes.
If you're gonna do an app, the city of Hayward has a great app system where you can report problems, take a picture of it, report problems through the app. And that would be great for residents to say, you know.
Again, there's so many different layers to a lot of these that again, you want to build in what you can, starting with what you have and then what other pieces can come. So we talked a little bit about this community social forum part, the affluent community, which will be a part of whatever we build out. They actually have the ability to create forms so that you could do exactly that. Here's the problem I've located. Here's the information you need to know. You submit it and it would go directly to the work order desk. So there are things that we're looking at, software pieces that we're looking at that would build that in. But again, I want to say this out loud. What you're going to get when we first launch is what we currently have. Things are going to be a phased approach. So anything new will come later. But we want to, hopefully by early next year, in through the end of the first or second quarter, roll out with what we currently have to replace our current level of service.
Does Laguna have an app?
Laguna does not have an app.
But they're very smartphone friendly. The website is.
Yes, the website itself, the residence portal is not.
Okay, well.
They're waiting for us to decide what we're gonna do and they're gonna steal ours. Honestly, seriously. Everybody I would talk to them and I'm like, can I take a peek behind the scenes? And then I'd look and I'd be like, ooh. Most of them are just, here's how you can pay your monthly fees. And that's the extent of it. When you look at Laguna Woods, I'm like, okay, they use Fora, they have Dwelling Live, this is gonna be wonderful. And you get in there and they're like, click, and now you have to log into Fora. Click, now you have to log into Access. I was like, oh, so you guys don't have this. They're like, no, what do you have? So I showed them ours and they're like, this is great. Can I have your web developer's name? I'm like, okay. So I ended up helping them more than they helped us. Except that, again, that was a valuable research tool because now I have a much better understanding that my Rossmore, what we have, is pretty darn good. We just have to find ways to make it look better and make it function a little bit better. So that would be the
next
plan.
level, right?
Yeah, take it to the next level.
So there's no action required here by the task force. This was just to get input, feedback from all of us. Is that right, Ann?
That's correct.
Okay, well, thank you and
You're
good
welcome.
luck.
Thank you.
So next up,
Before you go on,
Oh,
how
yes.
will we find out, since this is our last meeting?
So we will know, we're gonna know who the final 2 are. Recreation, Community Services plans to narrow it down to 2. They'll know that by early next week. So at the GRF board meeting, everybody tune in at the end of May. We will know if the final 2 are Agilysys in Vermont. Yay, we're going down that path. If it's the first one they looked at, I forget the name of it, and one of it will be Agilysys or Vermont, then at the board meeting, we'll be like, we don't know which path we're going down yet. We will continue to report out to planning especially when recreation decides which system they've chosen, there'll be financial components to that. So it will come to finance, it will come to planning, and it will go before the board. So as long as you read the newspaper or tune into the meetings, you will know kind of where we're headed. The game plan is to know and lock everything in by this summer. As I mentioned before, we want to keep Rossmore.com and My Rossmore on the same trajectory. So the RFP will probably, if the board agrees to it at the end of the month, we will start putting those out for requests in June, with the hope being that we come back to the board with a monetary figure by the July meeting. So July is kind of the target date for everything starting to take shape, so.
Congratulations.
Thank
A lot of
you.
work.
I have a question.
Sure.
One of the most important things when people are buying in Rossmore now with the contracts is there's a contingency tick mark on the contract that says I can get insurance. And so people are trying to get insurance. I just want to make sure that any of the fire maps, anything related to the different insurance information is all available, because not only are they using it, but the insurance companies are actually coming and looking at all the HOAs and reading everything. And they're looking, is insurance walls in, walls out, or, and what are the boundaries, how are they being rated by the different fire.
So one of the things we'll do when we select a website designer is they'll help us provide a checklist. So what they would do is they would take everything that's currently on Rossmore.com, and then we go to the different stakeholders to say what has to stay public facing. So I will meet with the different real estate groups and talk about what do you need for prospective buyers that will make the checklist, so that will make Rossmore.com. What it will look like, we've talked in this group about this. None of us likes that click, 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 click,
Yeah,
click, click. So I think what you're gonna end up seeing is that things are going to be sectioned more. So there's going to be a real estate section, home section, and when you get there, you'll click once from the home page, and then you're gonna click on the different items. It's going to probably be the tiled approach, because that seems to be what everyone really liked. But that tile will then take you to that kind of thing. Do you need the maps? Firewise is there. We have the insurance page that will stay. There's definitely different components. One of the things we're about to run in the paper and we're about to add to online, there's a lot of frequently asked questions for co-ops about, especially it just came up with the whole parcel tax and does that apply? So those kinds of things, we will continue to build those out as those types of things come up.
The First Mutual Board is starting to look at having a website. Is that something that can be hosted by Rossmore?
So My Rossmore, that Fluent community, is their roadmap is to actually create individual websites within. So yes, eventually the mutuals would be able to, they'll log in and they'll have a page structure. So they'll have menus. This is roadmap. Keep in mind, these are what could come, not locked in things. But there is an ability that you can connect different payment systems, so they could use that as a collection point. You can keep it behind a secure password protection, so anyone in First Mutual could then click and say, I'd like to be added to this. And then whoever happens to be on the board or is controlling that would say, okay, yes, you're in First Mutual, you can be inside the page. There's a lot of different components that will come with that. But I will tell you right now, that is going to be phase 2 or 3. The amount of work that's gonna be involved with that is gonna be extensive. The amount of staff time,
6 months, a year?
a year
A year.
minimum.
Okay.
Yeah. To start off though, Javier's already setting this up. First Mutual and all the different mutuals will have a page in Fluent Community, so you can use it as a communication tool. It's like an internal social media. You have an event coming up or you want to tell them when the meeting is, you can post that. And again, you can set it up so that only members of First Mutual can see what's in that feed. That's an easy setup. That's already sort of built in. The next level would actually require us to sit down and work with the different groups to actually set up pages, to create templates. And honestly, our first priority has to be getting the new My Rossmore up. So I'm not going to promise what we can't deliver, but I can say probably a year from now is when we'll start to build those things out.
Okay.
Didn't you say second quarter is about the time you thought?
Yeah, second quarter is
That's
when
about a year from now.
yeah, is when I think everything will be ready to launch and go live.
So let's move on. Ambassador program. This should be a quick discussion.
I appreciate the opportunity to explore it. It is more complicated than I thought. A female realtor who lives in Rossmore brought up a really good point about security. And I talked to various friends who might be male tour guides, and the female potential tour guides were certainly more concerned about security. How would you screen people? I hadn't thought of that. I just thought we would just, invite people in. So she has a system where she can screen people before she meets them and gives them a tour. And that's not something we have talked about. Personally, I just have a lot of things with the First Mutual Board and other things going on, so I really can't pursue it at this time, but I appreciate the opportunity and maybe someday.
Thank you for working on it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And what we'll stress is the virtual tours on the rossmore.com that will achieve some of that, but it doesn't have that human interaction. But that's the realtor's job.
And we have good insurance.
So there will be nothing in our recommendations in terms of ambassador program.
Yes.
All right. So next, Anne, staffing and rebranding.
All right. So for starters, GRF President Leanne Hamaji yesterday announced that we have rebranded the board as Rossmore Walnut Creek RWC Board. So we don't have to make a decision on that. You can ignore the pros and cons on that one. That's already locked in. Deborah and I are going to meet tomorrow and start talking about how to transfer everything that says GRF board into RWC board. I do want to emphasize again, we're looking at a soft launch. It's going to take a little while to get everybody there. There's just so many pieces to this, and there really isn't anybody to oversee it except Deborah and I right now. So we're going to be taking a measured approach. We will write an article next week. Sam's already done the annual meeting story and said, hey, guess what? We're all RWC board now. So we're moving in that direction. The piece that we need to decide if we want to include it in the report for rebranding is the property management end, the Rossmore Walnut Creek property management. One thing that has been requested by the MOD director is that we abbreviate it as RPM instead of RWCPM, which is way too much of a mouthful. So you would be looking at an abbreviation that really stands for Rossmore Property Management. But again, you want to keep things, I understand where he's coming from. MOD, RMP makes a lot more sense than alphabet soup. And I think that's one of the
RPM.
RPM. Yes, I know. Again, but people will remember it. So,
Does that really require us to make a recommendation?
no. Well, the recommendation part, MOD is not right now Rossmore. There's no Rossmore in Mutual Operations Department. So you are really talking about what the board agreed to was to supplant GRF and Golden Rain Foundation with Rossmore Walnut Creek. So in this case, if you want this to extend to the property management, I would make it part of the final report as a recommendation. And again, you've got your pros and your cons for why to do it. We've talked about enhancing the brand perception and how important that is, really being able to stand out from the competition, helping to improve our relevance as Rossmore Walnut Creek, making sure people understand. I mean, no one really knows what MOD is when they first come in here. Over time they do, but they don't know that it's property management.
Hold on, we've got two conversations going on.
No, I'm just saying RPM is the name of a mortgage company. It might be confusing.
Yeah, you'd be taught, so RPM would be an internal
Yeah.
abbreviation.
Nickname.
It would be a nickname. It
Like
wouldn't be
a
the-
MOD. I'm sure
Yeah, like
there's-
MOD. It wouldn't be the actual name. The actual name would be Rossmore Walnut Creek Property Management. That's what you'd be looking at. But again, on the con side, there's going to be some confusion with the customers. As Kathleen pointed out last time, many of them are going to continue calling it MOD for years and years to come.
Not that many years.
And not that many.
Well, let's be honest.
Not that many people.
I don't think that we have to worry so much about alienating our customers. It's not like they're gonna go somewhere else because we changed the name. The cost factor is actually really not that high. Most of what is up at MOD right now, there's very limited signage anyway. A lot of, you're talking about some changes to things like stationery and business cards. So it's nominal on the cost side. It can be time consuming because you are talking about 23 different mutuals in here and we're gonna have to communicate to all of the mutuals. It doesn't change the mutuals' names, but the mutuals are used to saying, well, we're gonna get a report from MOD. So getting people on board to understand the name change is gonna take a little bit of time. And then, like I said, there was some concern both by Jeroen and Todd, our CFO, about how long the name is and having to say that over and over and over again. But again, I think internally that's something, every group is gonna do this. Everyone's gonna have their own nickname. They're gonna decide what their own nickname is, probably without us. So we'll just let them do
Well,
that.
aren't we really trying to be more exposure for new people, property management? I
Yes.
understand what that means.
Yes.
Our mission is for that marketing piece. Once you're inside of Rossmore, that's another piece of the pie, in
Correct.
my mind.
Agreed.
Kevin?
I should know this, I'm on the mutual board. So MOD reports to you, right? So the GRF board runs MOD,
That's correct.
okay.
Or Rossmore Walnut Creek Board,
Yes.
but yes.
Yes. What about Rossmore MOD, Rossmore Mutual Operations Division?
I think the group had decided that operations division didn't really explain what they do, that they're a property management company. So that's how we got to the Rossmore Walnut Creek Property Management, was trying to get property management in there. So it really defined what their role is.
First Mutual had a session with our legal counsel recently, in this room. And they didn't like property management, they thought it should be community management. Because property management sounds like you're running, you're selling the real estate and you're bringing in renters, and that's what that property management. Is community management a better term than, because property management, I don't know.
I would disagree, because that community has a much broader thing
Okay.
than just what.
Okay.
And property management is a well-known phrase
Right,
in all different kinds of communities.
that's right. If you rent an apartment,
Exactly.
you go to property management for
Yeah, it's a
your
well-known
assistance.
phrase.
And MOD also does trust work, right? Trust properties, no.
Yeah, and then again, that's where the confusion comes into play. So you can have a landscaping department that is part trust and part MOD, right? And there's a division, I forget what the percentage breakdown is, but that's where it becomes confusing, is that everyone, because they don't understand what MOD stands for, now you'd be able to say, this percentage is doing trust and this percentage is doing the property management.
There is no trust.
No.
There is no trust. It's Rossmore Walnut Creek. So yes,
Mhm.
our landscape department does some work for RWC and some for property management. Trust and trust and state fund have got to disappear.
If the ultimate, if the best optimal, I'll say optimal, not best,
Mhm.
name is Rossmore Walnut Creek Property Management, that you should just, there's a phrase that says, don't cut the puppy dog's tail off a piece at a time. Just, if you're gonna make the change, just make it all
Yeah,
at once
bite the bullet.
and live with it. And
Yes.
you know you're gonna have those issues. People are gonna bark, they're gonna have
Yes.
different name. Every time I've done company name changes, oh my
Oh, God.
God. Talk about people come out from the woodwork trying to make all their, you're gonna have people, why did you do this? Why didn't you do that? It just, let it go off and
Just
do what's
remember
the
when the
right.
event center was trying to get built. And everybody having cat fits. Now everybody loves it. There's a transition gotta go through.
When you think about it, the trucks are currently labeled Rossmore Walnut Creek, just like the newspaper is.
Yep.
So it's just adding below that property management. Oh, it's saying what it is. Hello?
I agree.
All right, is there consensus among the committee that this is the right move? Yes?
The other suggestion that I would make is that we secure the FBN for this name as well, so that no one else can go get it. We did it with Rossmore Walnut Creek. I'd like to go back and do an addendum to that that will add in Rossmore Walnut Creek Property Management. Just again, so no one can take it.
Is there anything else that needs to be done at this time?
No, not that I know of at this time, but as we get rolling, there's probably gonna be pieces that are gonna come up that we may have to go back to the board and talk about. But right now, we think we've covered most of the bases. Again, we're just doing this as a doing business as, so we don't have to change certain things in governing documents. We don't have to change the account names, so we're kind of safeguarded there. I did also talk with Jeff Beaumont, our attorney, about the whole trademark deal, and he comes back again at no one can trademark Walnut Creek on its own, no one can trademark Rossmore on its own because they are entities. But we do have a trademark for Golden Ring Foundation. So he said if
Well,
we
thank God.
wanted to go. So what he said is if we wanted to go down the road of exploring a trademark, we certainly could do it. If we wanted to go down the road. But one of the things he said is that no one else could come along and trademark those. We could make an argument that we already have them. And again, trademarking a city name on its own, you can't do, so.
All right.
It's just a small thing. Is there any need to change the mutuals to homeowners associations and the coupon to homeowners association dues? Is
I
that?
don't think our group should have to make that
Yeah, we don't
decision. I
have-
think
we're not
that would be
touching the mutuals.
Yeah,
That-
the
they're-
mutuals.
It's too
would
down
make
in the
that.
weeds.
Right.
Well,
Make
they're
their
their
own
own,
decision.
they're their own governing body.
That's what I mean,
so-
it's too far-fetched, yeah.
Okay, so other things we need to kind of make a decision as to whether or not we want to recommend these to the board. So the front gate sign, you've got a couple of options. One, you could paint it and add the words Walnut Creek. That's an estimate of about $3,000 to $5,000. Or you can pull it up entirely, start all over again, and the estimate on that is between $25,000 and $35,000.
When you say paint, is the Rossmore lettering painted now?
So the Rossmore lettering is gold, but it's the blue and the green. If you look at them, they're pretty hideous right now. And they are not actually, I actually did go out there on the median and held up our colors. They're not the right, they're not the right
Okay, but
colors.
are
So
they
those would have to be
painted? Is
repainted.
that
Yes,
painted?
that is paint.
So
Mhm.
your proposal is below Rossmore?
Not my proposal, my
Idea.
the two options you could look at. Underneath Rossmore, do you see that sign is kind of like a brown color?
Yeah.
Which would need to become more like the real green,
Yeah.
probably. You would add in gold lettering, Walnut Creek.
I see.
So
That's
then
all
it
I-
becomes Rossmore, and Walnut Creek is very small underneath that because there's not a lot of space.
How old is that sign?
It's dates back to whenever they took the globe out, which I think
It's-
was 80 something.
Yeah,
So
has it
it's
been updated
40
since
years
then?
old. It's a
Yeah.
40-year-old sign.
It's pretty good for
At least.
40
Yeah,
years.
it's held up pretty nice.
Oh, I know that.
John Rafe told me he has gone out occasionally and touched up the paint, so they've done touch-up work on it.
So isn't Rossmore routed in? Would we be routing in Walnut Creek underneath and then painting in the routing? And so it's gonna look, it's not just gonna be painted Walnut Creek, right?
The lettering that's there is kind of an upraised lettering, so we would purchase an upraised
Oh, okay.
lettering so that it matches as close as possible. Anytime you're trying to add on to an existing sign,
That's
it's
40 years
not gonna
old.
be perfect. It just isn't. There are gonna people, if you get close to it, that'll go, oh, they threw those words up there. That's just the reality of it.
I'd like to make a suggestion. I don't think this task force needs to make this decision. I think these are two options available for the finance committee, planning committee, and board to decide, subject to availability of funds and desire.
Okay.
But I think these are two options that we can recommend.
But
Everybody
this
agree?
is our front door. This is marketing. And
I
any
do think the
designer will tell
board-
you curb appeal is everything.
Yes.
So I would, if it were me, I would vote for a new sign. This is old, it's very low, it's very boring. And so I think if we're doing all this work on the inside of our house, let's make our front door look really good. That's my-
And I think the
Well-
task force can make a recommendation. We're making a recommendation for the websites,
For the-
right? So
Do we make
if
a
you want to, you
recommendation to the
can.
planning committee? Does it push to the planning committee and then move forward from there to the finance and the board?
Yeah.
So you can put it in the final report, and no doubt this final report's now gonna go back to planning and finance, because anything that does have a planning or
Oh, no.
financial component will need to run through those two committees.
Okay. Anybody else? I mean, I tend to agree with Amy. Here's one of the reasons I don't want to do that is because if that is, we're submitting a recommendation to the board for approval. And if we include something that says you got to spend 50 grand in order to accept our recommendation, we're going to run into some interference because they're not ready to make that decision yet because it hasn't gone through all the channels. So that's just my hesitation.
I'm not sure that the
Process-wise.
board is going to completely green stamp here the final report anyway, because they don't know the cost ramifications of rossmore.com or myrossmore.com or all of those pieces. It's just a recommendation.
Right. That's why I like this recommendation. There are two options that could be pursued.
Maybe we can just verbally tell you. We would love to have a new sign.
Yes, yes,
It would be a
yes.
good
The
idea
preference-
based
The
on, you know
preference
what.
is a
Yes.
new sign,
You know,
however, we
It could be
recognize
our
that this could work too.
recommendation. We
Yeah.
don't need to
Better
act on
option,
it.
full replacement.
Okay, we've already talked about the websites, and one of the questions has come up that we have not actually made a determination. RossmoreWalnutCreek.com. It is privately owned by a company in France, and this is what they do. They buy up all of these names hoping that you will hire a broker to buy them back. So the only way that we're gonna get RossmoreWalnutCreek.com would be if we first spend about $100 to have them negotiate to find out what the cost of that name would be. So I have $100 in the budget. If the marketing task force would like me to go and, because this is operating, we wouldn't have to go to the board to ask. I can just take it from my marketing funds. Then we can find out what would be the actual cost of owning the name. But the question comes, do we want to own the name?
Yes. Anybody disagree?
No.
Wait,
Go for it, Ted.
so it's not that I disagree, but I want to ask, when you go to the website right now and you type in rossmore.com, sometimes it comes up Rossmore Walnut Creek, but when I click on it, it takes me to rossmore.com.
That's because I did some stuff
I
behind the
know,
scenes.
I know. That's what, so what I'm saying
You
is,
just manage
Is
the
it-
click-throughs.
is it worth a big deal getting through the stuff, the $1,500 possibly, or whatever it could be for that? Because we're a big community, they might want more money because they think we're, you really, so we don't know what taller they're gonna put on it. Is it really worth that? Because they can already get to the site already. Is this just to get to the website?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things here. First off, I've already done the valuation report, and the valuation report says it's worth $300. So I would go in there, and I know they're gonna negotiate, but I'd be like, if the value is 300, you can go ahead and hold on to it if you're gonna charge me more than 500. I can do that kind of thing with a broker,
If we
and a
bring-
broker is kind of the intermediary
If
there.
we bring their light to it.
Here's,
Does it cause another problem?
Well, who
They'll say,
knows?
hey, you can't do this anymore
Right.
now.
here's the problem. There's a couple things. If we owned RossmoreWalnutCreek.com, I would start by saying it would redirect to Rossmore.com because that's where we have
Yeah,
all,
Yeah, it always-
everything lives there, right? The problem with not owning RossmoreWalnutCreek.com is that somebody else could
Amen.
go and negotiate with the broker
Yeah.
and take that name. And now, if you are somebody out there who's like, oh, I heard all these great things about Rossmore Walnut Creek, and you go to start typing that in and that's what pops up, we don't own it. We don't own any of the messaging that's
We
tied to
gotta
that.
own it.
So
Yeah.
that's,
We have
that's
to,
your.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's no question.
Okay,
All right.
then I will buy the broker and we'll find out, or hire the broker and find out what it's gonna cost us.
Yeah.
All right, so uniforms, right now, we're gonna move everything over to Rossmore Walnut Creek logo. The switch over, if we were to do everything immediately, would be very costly. So what we're doing, I think this is the most cost efficient thing, is as new uniforms are purchased, they will be purchased with the Rossmore Walnut Creek logo. So Julie Chile estimates that within 3 years, everyone would have a Rossmore Walnut Creek logo attire, uniform.
Golf shop?
I have to talk with Mark about that, but I have no doubt that we will be going down that road too. Yes.
So some employees who work for Rossmore Walnut Creek Property Management don't reflect on their uniform that they work for property management.
again, we have to be careful with that, right? Because there are some people who work a certain amount for Rossmore Walnut Creek and a certain amount for property management. I don't want these people to have to go change their uniforms. So one of the reasons why it's always just been a Rossmore logo is because then whoever that individual is, it can change based on whatever their job happens to be.
Everybody okay?
Okay. The newspaper and the TV station will not change. Walnut Creek is part of, I can't see it here because I should have put up the actual front page. It says Rossmore News and then underneath it does say Walnut Creek, so they are tied. Rossmore TV is doing the same. They're adding it at the bottom of their logo so that it's very clear that it's Rossmore Walnut Creek. But both the TV station and the newspaper, we already have them certified, and the steps taken to change those names would be pretty labor intensive. Plus all the contracts that we have with advertisers, the contract that we have with Comcast, all of that stuff would have to be changed. Okay, then rebranding. So my game plan was to do a soft launch. Like I said, Leanne kind of got a bit of a jump. So some of what's in phase 2 will now have to move into phase 1. The plan is with phase 1, websites and social media, those are already done. The fleets and the vehicles already have Rossmore Walnut Creek on them. We moved to the property management. Again, this is stuff I'll talk with Jeroen and Todd about. Where do we make those changes and where do we not? The job postings, that's underway. We've already changed all of the terminology. So the new job postings coming out this week should say Rossmore Walnut Creek. It doesn't say here, but I am underway with the uniforms of getting that logo changed. And then the next part that we need to do are templates for the email signatures, for the voicemail greetings, for the business cards, and for the stationery. That was supposed to be the end of phase 1. However, now coming up in phase 1, we're going to do all of the internal documents and the notices that deal with the GRF board, now becoming Rossmore Walnut Creek board. So we'll be changing things like the agendas, the minutes, the governing documents, the policies and procedures. A lot of this is just housekeeping, but it is significant. GRF is all over everything. So it's going to take a while to get that changed. What will stay in phase 2 will be things like some of our forms, our notices and applications. They'll all need to be reprinted. So we will take care of that. The event and program materials, mostly that come out of recreation and counseling, those will also get transferred over. And then in phase 2, that's when I'll start to go back and check to be sure that everyone is actually using those templates, which will be fun, trying to track down to be sure everybody's put it on their email and on their voice messages, etc. And then phase 3, this will be the hard launch. So this will come once the, yeah.
Gamify it. Give a prize for everybody who finds one that's, or, you know, don't make it negative, but if somebody finds something else or whatever, there's no punishment for it. But if you find it in some place, you get points or something like that, and then whoever has the most points at the end of the quarter.
That's a good idea.
Prize or something like that.
Okay.
It is,
Then you have your whole group looking for it.
Yes.
and it makes it fun.
It makes it easier for you.
Yes, it does. I'm all for anything that makes it easier.
I know 2 people's voicemails that need changed.
But they all need change.
Do I get points?
But no, here's the thing, we don't
You
want
can't play.
I don't want anything to change until we've given them a template, because you also don't want people running off and doing it their own way. We want to be sure everything is consistent, so we'll do that. So hard launch will come once the websites launch. If we decide to go with a new sign, that would be a great time to debut the new sign as well. We would be sure that phases 1 and 2 are completed, and that's when the big communications plan will come out, where we're really going to hit not just the residents, but also the vendors, so that they understand sort of the whole
Another suggestion
as well.
for fun.
Mhm.
Yes, maybe pick a date and have like a little celebration for the group, I mean, for the residents. It will bring attention. Maybe you can couple it with something you're already doing, so it doesn't really have to be a big deal. But having, you know, giving away little tchotchkes that are, so everybody has like a little thing to put on
Key
their
ring.
refrigerator, key, who has keys and pens? You know, whatever.
Golf cart key
You know,
ring.
just, yeah, whatever.
Yes.
But just, you know, something that's a little celebratory, something that's out in the public, you know, and all the residents get to take home, like I said, little tchotchke,
Mhm.
have a cupcake with a new logo on it, whatever is a thing. Just, so making it a little fun and making it a little more public.
Sounds like a good idea.
So another question, and I left you a voicemail the other day. So some of you may have seen this, but when you come east on 24 and you go to exit for Pleasant Hill Road, there's a sign for Rossmore. And by the way, it looks really old, really dingy, really dirty.
There are several signs.
There are several, yes.
And there's one on the street coming up, I can't remember what the street's name is.
Olympic and on Pleasant Hill Road.
And no, there's one that's in the residential area I saw the other day,
Oh.
not in that whole Crest Hill area. You
Yeah.
turn on one and
Oh.
I can't remember what the name
Coming
of the
back from
street is.
Danville. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a couple of.
I've contacted the county.
get
I'm
points
trying to
for
find
that.
out who oversees the signs so that we
No.
can figure out, one, can they be changed?
Or
I
freshmen,
don't know.
yeah, all
I
right,
don't have the answer to that, but
okay.
it's on my list.
Caltrans thing.
Okay, so that's, oh, no, timeline. Okay, so again, I kind of had a plan for this. It's gotten rattled a little. We're gonna finalize the development plan first for the marketing website and myrossmore.com. As I mentioned earlier, RFP is going before the board this month. Then we hope to have proposals with cost estimates and our selection to the board in July so that we can hire and have them on board by August. We're running in tandem with what recreation is doing so that we can try to hire both of these people around the same time. I will say one of the things that we've done that will make it a little bit easier, very few people know this, but if you ever go on, sometimes you'll see a pop-up that says you're leaving the site if you're trying to open a document. That's because we offloaded all of the documents for all the mutuals and for Rossmore Walnut Creek. They all live in a vault that's like a cloud storage vault. So that what will happen is when we do this, we can just unconnect from one place and connect it somewhere else. That was the most time-consuming part for Laguna Woods, so we decided, I knew we were headed this direction, so I just decided let's put them in a vault. It actually speeds up the time when you're on our website anyway, so it kind of had a benefit there.
Are they searchable now?
No, they're not. They have never been. That's one of the things that we will talk to our new website developer about, whether or not we can make that. There's a lot of, because everything is done in a PDF, there's a lot of different ways that the PDFs have to be set up, and it's very work intensive to ask the mutual board coordinators who are already overseeing a lot of mutuals to make those changes is kind of hard. But there are different plugins you can buy. One of the things we're looking at, so. So website development is the first part, and we will also be doing phase 1 and part of phase 2 as part of rebrand 1. So that's the early part of this year. This is before we get to fall. When we get into fall and winter, then we're looking at most of the content creation and the design work will happen for rossmore.com and myrossmore.com. The same time, just shortly after that, we will really be hard launching phase 2 of the rebranding. And then, as I mentioned, end of first quarter, early second quarter, we hope to have the websites completed with the hard launch for the rebrand. That might work out good too, because maybe the weather will be nice enough to do an outdoor celebration instead of having to put everybody into the event center, but we'll see. So that's the timeline.
And you don't have any dates on here.
Yes, that's done on purpose. Again, I've talked about this before. We are trying to, marketing has always been about 5, maybe 10% of my job. What we're looking at now becomes closer to 50 or 60% of my job, but my other part of the job doesn't end. We still have to run the newspaper, run the TV stations. There's a lot of, and Javier and I are really the only two that are involved in this process. So even though we are looking at an outside vendor for rossmore.com, we may inevitably look at one for myrossmore.com as well. It takes a staff person to run that. And so there's no dates here because I need the flexibility to be able to deal with whatever comes up. Just as an example, some of you probably already know this because I think you submit articles to our paper. 2 weeks ago, I had 5 of my 13 on staff, and that was it to put out an entire week's newspaper. It's what happens. People end up with medical issues or there's pre-planned vacations or whatever. So I've left flexibility in here. That's why this is what happens in quarter 2 and 3. This is what happens in 3 and 4, and this is what happens in 1 and 2. That way, again, there's some fluidity.
So I have a question. In your recommendation to GRF, you have stated somewhere in here that a new hire. Is that a formal request? Are we gonna
Well,
request that?
that's-
Are you requesting it?
All right, so here's kind of the fun deal, right?
What's the next slide?
It's the next slide. We'll talk about the next slide.
Okay.
So, staffing resources, again, this kind of breaks down so you can see who I have on the team. I'm the communications director, so these are all the different things that I oversee. I have a content team, which has 1 manager, 2 writer editors, and 1 photographer. Their primary is for the newspaper, but they also do a lot of work for the websites. The production team has 3 graphic artists and designers. They are designing most of the ads that you see in the paper, but they also do other publications. So for example, the wildfire safety book, the earthquake safety book, that all comes out of my department for design work as well. For circulation, I have 1 part-time supervisor who oversees 16 part-time on-call news carriers who only work 1 day a week. That is its own operation, and we don't have it bleed into anything else because it is so complicated. Websites, I have 1 manager, and Javier is in charge of both Rossmore.com and myrossmore.com, as well as the fitness center has its own website. And there's other kind of components and things that some social media accounts here and there that he also works on. And then I also have the TV team, which is 1 station manager, 1 studio coordinator, and I have 1 part-time program assistant. She's the one who does most of the slides, and she runs bingo, which is our most popular program. And then our 3 part-time on-call videographers are the equivalent of 1 full-time videographer. So we have 3 people that are doing that job. So the bottom line is, I consistently look at staffing and how we can reorganize and how you can pull more time out of people. I will say everybody that I have hired for the newspaper side also has a digital background. So as we make a shift, they're able to make that shift. But right now, our bread and butter, we are $1 million revenue generating newspaper, and a lot of that is tied to print. So I can't just move them over without it costing us real money. So if we're going to really look at some of the things we've talked about having that social media component, about making My Rossmore really more robust, especially giving each club, each mutual its own space within My Rossmore, we really do probably have to look at having an additional resource. Somebody who is focused on marketing, which is, like I said, right now, not something that I have built into the team. So in looking at who would give us the most bang for our buck, it's really somebody who would be a full-time marketing content creator. So you would have somebody who specializes in that kind of engaging content, both written and photo, but mostly video. We would definitely want somebody who specializes in video. That is, as you know, right now we have 1 video on our website. That's our Welcome to Rossmore. What we're looking at doing is a lot more than that. With the virtual tours, with being able to do the testimonials. So having somebody who can do that would be huge, it would be key. Median average salary, Arnold helped me break this down. You're looking at about $75,000 a year for somebody in the Bay Area who would occupy this role. The recommendation that we have in the report is for staff to look at this, and that's partly because we haven't really, because of the changeover to NetSuite, we haven't seen financials yet. So I can't even tell you, am I on track with where my revenue is right now? If I was ahead, then I could come in and say, I think that in year 1, I could offset this much, but I can't tell you right now if I can offset any of this. Or if we're talking about as a new position, 75,000 plus, because you're talking benefits as well. So closer to $100,000 being added into the coupon. I never like to go to the residents and ask them to pay for something without being able to say, I have a game plan for maybe I need this much upfront in year 1, and by year 2. As an example, we moved Javier in as the website manager 1.5 years ago. The first half of the year, I said, I need for the residents to cover that in the coupon. But by the end of the full year one, I will have that position paid within my budget, and that's what we've been able to do. I will say, I think I'm at the top of where our revenue is gonna be at $1 million. I'm not sure that I can pull much more out. We are facing an economic uncertainty, so we have had some advertisers pull out. Our printing press has had to go up, so I've already had to increase up our ad rates as high as I want to go, because again, you don't want to lose any more advertisers. So I don't know that I think $1 million may be the top of the pyramid on that. Now, whether there's other places that we can save or that we can move personnel around, that's something I'm always looking at. But right now, I will tell you, we're at our kind of our tipping point. So I guess that if the group here wants to make it a recommendation, what I have to say is you're going in with 75,000 as that sort of baseline number for right now.
So my thought is that as a recommendation that we want staff to consider this and not necessarily recommending pay grade or any dollar amounts at this point in time. But considering that additional resources are needed. Are we comfortable with that?
Yes, yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Where does the Facebook page fit in as far as?
So that would go under the marketing content creator, as well as I have somebody on staff. When I hired him, he's one of my page designers. He used to run the all of the social media accounts for the weekly newspapers in the Bay Area News Group. So I brought him in because he has a social media background. So when we get to that point and the website's launched, that's part of, I'm gonna shift some work off of him. We're gonna make some different workflow changes with the newspaper so that he would be able to devote between 20 and 25% of his time to social media. But the marketing content creator will be doing a lot of that, especially the video component. That's just, I have like I said, three videographers on the TV side, but there's a lot that they already have to do. They do the GRF board meetings, all of the committee meetings have to be put onto YouTube. That was a board recommendation, something the board wanted. We do bingo once a month. We have a lot of the lectures and event programs, and even at that, we have had to scale back a little bit in order to do the high number of meetings that we're doing. So
We totally support you need a new person.
thank you.
You don't have to convince us.
All right, then moving on to brand guide update.
Do we have an update on that one? Oh, yes, we did. Hold on. Let me pull that one up. All right. I'm having a hard time finding the brand guide. Okay. I have it. I just have to get it.
Jump.
All right, here we go. Oops. I keep losing Zoom. All right. Okay, so the brand guide, most of this has stayed the same from what we had before. We did add in the values from last time's meeting, and with the target audience, we've also now put in the vendors. The tone stays the same. Visual elements, the logos are pretty much the same. So is the icons. We did talk about, it's missing on this one, I do have it on the slide. One of the things Kathleen had brought up was sort of examples for usage with the logos, so that is added into the brand guide. One thing that we thought was important, we don't want the logo to be too small, so we've now also given them icon sizes. This is the minimum size that they're allowed to use the logo so that you're able to see it. And then Kathleen had also suggested that we have complementary brand colors, so I went back and asked Andriana if she would help us with that. So she came up with it's called Olive Drab, which I think is a terrible name, but it's a color that goes well with blue and green, and then
The
magenta.
thing I would add on this is the recommendations or requirements that those are only to be used when the necessity is to have multiple colors. So like if you had to write, well, I think you can imagine.
Yes.
So they cannot be substitutes. I like this better or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
We can definitely add that. Okay. And then the typography hasn't really changed. I think everybody agreed that that was pretty good for last time. The mood board, I still have hopes that we can replace some of these photos with things that are actually from here in Rossmore, but it was interesting when I started talking with our fellows and with Adriana, one of the things they immediately brought up with, be really careful using real people. If you're talking about locations in here, fine, but if you use real people, when they pass away, oftentimes their family members don't want them included in this anymore, and then you end up having to consistently replace your mood board.
And don't they have to sign a waiver?
They, technically yes and no. If you're taking your photo, you can do a verbal agreement on something for a website. It's TV stations where you have to have an actual written. But again, I think that for something like this, it makes more sense to not use people who live here. Then we don't have to consistently.
And they're so
change it.
attractive.
They are attractive. And again, you know, we talked about
Everybody
this
looks
last
happy.
time as well. It's really
Everybody's at their
important
best.
with our imagery that you have these really high contrast and really vibrant colors. That's what we want to see on the website. It's part of the marching orders, it's part of the request for proposals.
I think
So-
competitors don't necessarily use real people either. You're like,
No,
those people
exactly.
do not live there.
One of the things that Andriana and I talked about is the fact that you really are not, when we're looking to hire for the website and when we're looking to do anything with our marketing branding, we don't want to just rely on a newspaper photographer. Our photographer is exceptional at doing newspaper photos and even doing some of your more basic photo work. But you're really looking for somebody who specializes in this. They know how to get the colors to pop. They know how to frame things in a specific way. They understand what your brand is going in, and they're always looking at tailoring everything for that. So again, I do have, it's not quite 25,000 anymore. It's probably closer to about 22,000 left in the marketing budget. And that's one thing that we will do is hire a special photographer just for that, out of using that money. And then applications, just examples of where we would be using the logo and using the name in places where it already exists, like social media. Like I said, we've already started a lot of that. And then examples for messaging to prospects, adult children, our different target audiences. The one thing that we did take off, because the group kind of agreed that we didn't want to have all the little phrases and, you know, kind of determining already what we thought the marketing slogan should be. So that's been removed. Is there anything else that anyone is seeing that's still missing from the brand guide that they think needs to be
Looks
included?
pretty
At
good.
this point, I think as you start to use it, you might find something that you need to add.
No doubt.
But
That's always the case, right?
you've done
Pretty awesome.
Very good.
Excellent.
Excellent.
All right. Last item on the agenda. Draft
Drum roll.
of the final report.
Let's have a drum roll.
I hope you've had a chance to read it. It merely is a summary of all the things that we've talked about and a lot of the PowerPoints that Ann has put together. And when this is presented to the board, Ann, I think you said you would bring in the PowerPoint slides.
Yeah,
that
so
have been
what I'll do
used.
is each one of these pieces that we've talked about, I'll collect a couple slides from the presentations you guys have already seen. So when we talk about what rossmore.com is, we'll pull up a couple of those slides so that the board can see sort of our process of how we came up with each one of these items.
So any comments on what you see in front of you?
Everything's just prodigious amount of work. So, yay us, but especially
Yes.
yay you.
Down to 4 pages.
Does it, Michael mentioned recently in the meeting, linking real estate ads or real estate listings is anywhere listed here?
So it's not as part of this, but it is part of the RFP for the marketing website designer, so they will know that that's part of it. That's one of the pieces, there is a dollar amount attached to that, so it will have to be part of the 2026 operating budget. So we will have to ultimately ask the board to make an approval on that one. But that's one of those ones where I like to offset things, especially where the website's concerned. So what I'm looking at right now is building in enough ad positions on rossmore.com that it will cover whatever the cost is so that it meets out.
Would you ask the property owner to pay a little money to get it advertised?
So again, keep in mind, we don't have any real estate agents here. So if you're gonna do that, the property owners are dealing directly with a real estate agent. We did look at the possibility of going to real estate agents and asking them to help offset the cost of the MLS listings. But there's so many different ones. How do you figure out who pays what? It's easier on our end to have ad positions and ask the real estate agents to purchase the ad position. And we have a little bit more control over that.
How expensive is subscribing to MLS?
Javier looked that up. I think it's 9,000 a year. It's not expensive.
That seems expensive.
In the grand scheme of things, it's not too bad.
So keep in mind, these recommendations, they're more conceptual, right? That we're presenting to the board, and it's a blueprint for Ann to be able to go forward with the board's approval. So that's what we're looking for, is everybody's sign off here that we think that this is a good conceptual plan. Ted?
In conclusion, on the bottom part there, do we need to say anything about that we possibly might have to revisit this? Because I don't want it to look like, as we've done other ad hoc committees, it's a lot of times they feel like a one and done in some of the past ones that we've done.
So the last sentence says, these recommendations are designed to be adaptive and scalable as Rossmore's needs evolve. Does that satisfy?
Are you talking about the committee or the active or the report?
The committee.
About the committee.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that
I didn't
too.
see, where did you read that? Oh, I see these recommendations.
It's in the executive
Yeah,
summary.
I see it.
It's not in the other one.
No, I get it.
So we do have a number 3, the website strategy, convene a working group to consult on designing content. So we would still be keeping a smaller number from this as part of the overall redesign. But to Ted's point, I think what you're asking is, should the full group come back at some point, or at least leave that
No, I wasn't
open-ended?
saying the full group, but I just got a feeling like this is not, there's gonna need something next year, you know? Besides, we got the website, but besides some other things that you might discover that's coming on that needs a better look, I just don't want it to be all done
Well,
and never be looked at
the
again.
conclusions on both documents, let me read the larger document. It says, by implementing these measures now, Rossmore positions itself for long-term success while remaining adaptable to future needs. The board is encouraged to support this evolving initiative and remain open to continuous improvement.
Okay, good.
And
I get it
ChatGPT
now.
did a great job with that. And Ann.
Dwight and I have a battle over how much we should use AI. I think it should be limited.
I guess I'm kind of thinking this on the same as Ted, that we say something about that we would be available in future benchmarks to reconvene, because we're the ones that have been here, done this, if needed. I guess, I don't know if that's a task force kind of thing.
It's kind of up to the board to make that decision, but
Oh, it's saying
I think-
offer to it. I'm not saying we're deciding it.
Yeah, you definitely would, or I say definitely, it would be difficult to bring somebody in
Other people.
who hasn't had the background,
Yeah.
at least for the next year or so.
I think we'll definitely make the board know that they already know this task force was so dedicated to this effort. to know that people are willing to come back.
I would just like to have it in written format, that we offer our services continuing because we've done
If
the legwork.
required, if called.
If called upon, yeah, that's all I'm saying. Is that not done in Rossmore?
I don't want to make it.
You're rocking back and forth like.
Yeah, I'm like, I just want to get this approved. I would like to do that verbally, if you don't mind.
So, one of the things that might help everybody is that we did not really define how to measure success or what it's gonna look like or what it should look like, so I don't know if that falls on your shoulders or what, like, how do we know we're making progress or this is working?
You mean the task force or all the things
We've just done a boatload of work, how do we know it's effective? And we haven't really looked at that, but I'm not sure.
Monitoring.
So.
The challenge is that this is a fork in the road.
Yep.
And once you take it, you can never come back. So, how can you measure? I mean, I'm a big person for metrics, but there
Yeah.
are certain things you can't measure. And also marketing, for good or for bad, tends to deliver most of its value in the future.
right.
So it's a non-linear kind of a thing. You do something today, something small today, it expands. 5 years from now, it's, improves.
So
It
the
has an
web-
arc.
But you do have to know.
The website will be up in, say, a year, and we can monitor, home sales are down 12% now. We'll see if they pop up.
I mean,
That's so out of our control,
well-
so, I mean, it has to do with, anyway, I'm agreeing that there needs to be metrics. I don't think we should put metrics in here.
No, I'm just saying that if we talk about the future, I mean, in order for anybody to benchmark and know, you have to have metrics,
So there's certain things that I do intrinsically already with digital, right? So when we do rossmore.com, for example, and we started doing the home and real estate ads, it was very important to make sure to maintain that ad base, that we were driving traffic consistently there. So I set a goal in year 1 to have 25% more traffic year over year. In year 2, 20%, year 3, 20%. And we have been above those percentages at all times. So when we launch off, my Rossmore in particular, because I think it's really important that we get that website so that it is more intricately used in here. That's one of the things that we will do, is we will set benchmarks in years 1, 2, and 3 for traffic, and that I can measure. I can see how many people are on, what they're using. I also have what's called a heat seeking map that I keep on the website, so I can see what people are consistently going to, so that we can see
What
what's
attracts them.
right, what's
Yeah.
really, where they tend to hover the longest. That's why the all around Rossmore guide has turned out to be really popular. And one of the things I do with the heat seek mapping, as I go beyond the Bay Area, so I'm looking like Southern California throughout the country, most of our traffic is now going to that guide and to the video, which is why I know those are key parts of what, so we can do those kinds of metrics, right? We can, but you're not necessarily talking about, is the change to the marketing website necessary? Was that a successful deal in terms of selling more homes? We probably can't track that, but can we track that what we've done is driving more traffic to it? We're seeing more people spending more time on the website. That's the kind of thing that we can track.
Yeah.
And be sure that those components are actually working.
All right, so how about I add a sentence at the end that says something like, members of the task force are more than willing to reconvene in the future with the board's approval to assist with the implementation of these recommendations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, do we have a motion to approve these recommendations with this addition? Okay, we've got a motion and a
I need the
second.
full motion, spoke aloud, please.
I move that the marketing task force
Adopt these
accept
recommendations.
what?
Adopt these recommendations.
Adopt these recommendations with a small modification that was done today
To the board.
to the board.
Our RWC board.
To the RWC.
To the
board, okay.
RWC board.
All right,
We have a second.
any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Walker,
Yes?
Bentley.
Yes.
Bollinger,
Yes.
Dowling,
Yes.
Color,
Yes.
Register,
Yes.
and Shaw.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Ooh,